As I was putting this sermon together, I was thinking about how King's birthday, January 15th, closely corresponds to, of course, we have an inauguration this week. And these parallels are not lost on me. The Montgomery bus boycott, King's first church in Montgomery, Alabama, is where the Confederacy started. There's these ironies that the better angels of our nature are always right there with the devils of our nature, simultaneously. And if you look for that in history, it's remarkable that a man who stood for love has a birthday that corresponds to an inauguration for a man that stands for division. And you know, I'm not watching. It's not because I don't love this country. I do love this country. I'm not nationalistic in that sense. I love it because of my ability to be able to stand here as a black man and be able to espouse what I believe. But there are a lot of things about this country I don't love. And I can't bear anymore to be in spaces of antagonistic, fear-based narratives. I can't do it. I can't. And so, you know, our theme this month is story. And it's clear that the world operates on narratives or myths, whether they be true or untrue. So I'm choosing to think about the Washington Commanders story today. That's so much better. I mean, and honestly, I was thinking on the way here, I'm gonna do a sermon on it, but I thought, you know, a lot of people might not come for that, but if I can shape it right, because it's a miracle. And I tell you, we needed it because it's cold. I mean, it's so cold and snowy, we canceled the second service. And yes, I'm making a lot of jokes about it because you all got frantic. I tell you, I was just like, Ryan was like, this is nothing. This is nothing. But here we are. And you know, winter's cold, it's unpredictable, it's chilly, the skies are gray. In many ways, this is how a lot of us feel today, quite apropos. It feels like winter in America. Winter in our collective spirit, our hearts have grown icy, frozen, given way to ego, greed, selfishness, the relentless pursuit of power, and the warmth of empathy and community found in so few spaces, replaced by cold indifference. Everybody's focused on me, myself, and I. How many followers can I get? How can I monetize my followers? Individual narcissism run amok. And maybe, as I've said in years past, it's a process perhaps in our evolution that we have to go through. But it leaves many of us with cold connections, distant in our compassion, distracted by the quest for endorsements and popularity. Can we thaw from this winter of discontent, rekindle the warmth of beloved community? I believe we can. It'll take a long time. King and I differ in the fact that he was not a gradualist. He wanted it done. He knew it was a story, change the reality. People don't change that fast. They just don't. You know, it took so many generations for me to be standing here today. But I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. And you are too. People were nasty in the 1900s. You look at those videos and movies, it's like, oh, humanity was awful, dirty. Jeremy. We've come a long way. We got a long way to go. This last election reminds me that, of course, we have become too comfortable with the older narratives. That's what we chose. Ultimately, don't try to think too hard. The older, more established narratives, the old software, it was easier to operate. Think of yourself when you have to learn a new thing. You'd rather keep that old computer than upgrade. You'd rather stay with Microsoft than go to Apple. It's just, no, not me. I see you over there. Not everybody, I'm just saying in general. Stories are powerful. And that's why I want to talk about Dr. King. I think he is a misunderstood story. You go to Washington, D.C., you see this gigantic statue, "Let us hew out of a mountain of despair a stone of hope." It's beautiful. King was a little guy. He was my height. Little guy. Big heart, big vision, giant statue. It's awe-inspiring. I cried when I went there. It was beautiful. And I know he was a flawed man. But his vision wasn't flawed. And I want to talk a little bit about that vision. When I was in undergraduate college at Hampton University, one of the things we do at a black college is we debate. And one of the debates was always about Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X and their approaches. And a lot of my friends saw Martin Luther King as passive and an appeaser to white folks, accepted by the system. But Malcolm X, he was the radical revolutionary. And some of this is true, I guess, but as I saw it, King was radical. He was more radical than Malcolm X. And Malcolm X believed in this term, by any means necessary, saying, hey, we just got to get it done. And if it included violence, early Malcolm said, yeah. King, on the other hand, practiced a radical, nonviolent approach as a bold act of love, a redemptive force for justice and change. Malcolm's message was particular to a group of people, blacks. It was exclusive in that sense. King's was particularly, yes, for black folks, but also universal, included all people. To say that is not radical is a miss. King's radicalism was rooted in beloved community for all people, where justice, equity, and compassion reign for us. And most of the world evolutionarily has lived as tribal. My people. My people, not your people. Your people, not my people. That's how the world has lived. So it's easy to say, I want it all for my people. That's not a special message. It's particular. King's was universal. That was radical. And it was radical in how he saw the systems at play as interconnected, interlocking. To focus just on racial justice is to miss the point that it's all connected. The economic systems, the political systems, the religious systems, all connected. And he saw all of them as looking at people as things, cogs. And so he would say we have to move, simple statement, move from a from a thing-oriented society to a people-oriented society. Radical. Not really radical in a sense for us, because it's like, duh. But for the history of humanity, who operates from its amygdala, radical. In a letter In a sermon titled Letter to American Christians, in 1956, 27 years old, Martin Luther King said this: America, the richest and most powerful nation in the world, can well lead the way in this revolution of values. There's nothing except a tragic death wish to prevent us from reordering our priorities so that the pursuit of peace will take precedence over the pursuit of war. Even as a young preacher, he saw the moral failures of our nation as being obsessed with power and materialism. Still is. And he knew that America's wealth and strength for him should be used to uplift humanity, not to dominate or to exploit. In 1963, in his book, Why We Can't Wait, he wrote, "White Americans must recognize that justice for black people cannot be achieved without radical changes in the structure of society." It wasn't just about laws and policies. It was about a fundamental, foundational transformation of our values, dismantling systems that perpetuated inequality. This was a radical call for a spiritual transformation through a social justice lens. By the late 1960s, he was speaking even more boldly. As he was coming to see how things were interconnected and interrelated, he began speaking out against Vietnam, and in a sermon titled The Three Evils of Society, he said that the evils of capitalism are as real as the evils of militarism and racism. The problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power. This is not a passive dreamer. This is a revolutionary. King saw that racism, poverty, they were symptoms of a deeper sickness in America's spirit, in America's soul. In his sermon, Beyond Vietnam, 1967, he said, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death." Wow. And I understand things a bit differently. So I always say, after that death comes rebirth. So maybe it's necessary for us to die spiritually. Maybe we have to go through this, as I said, and approach spiritual death and just go all into this materialism and get sick from it, like eating a bunch of candy. Maybe that's what we need. I don't know. But I know this country right now is spiritually dead. And King would not believe where we are. Just months before his assassination in 1968, he delivered a powerful critique of capitalism. In a speech to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, he said, "Again, we have deluded ourselves into believing the myth that capitalism grew and prospered out of the Protestant work ethic of hard work and sacrifices. Capitalism was built on the exploitation of black slaves and the poor, and continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor both here and abroad." Still true today. Don't fool yourself. There is no first world without a third world. And so we're all complicit in this. Nobody gets off the hook. We still exploit the poor and the vulnerable. We still pour millions, billions into almost useless political campaigns, wars where we, after killing millions and hundreds of thousands of people, finally decide to agree or agree to disagree. Primitive. We are still adolescent in our evolution. We have not even become teenagers. We have a long way to go. The question is, are we willing to confront these systems? It's hard. We don't want to lose our comfort. So I get it. But this question of what are we willing to do is more pressing now with this nation full of so many divides. With now those same issues morphing into other issues around sexism and homophobia, issues around immigrant rights. It's really still the same issue, us versus them. We're better than you. Everybody's got to stop thinking they're better than other people. You might have made some better decisions, which gave you better opportunities. You may have been raised in a better family. You're not better. If we can get over that, we might be able to redeem the soul of this nation. Revolution of values. Revolution of values. King said that, he quoted a Unitarian preacher, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. But to bend it, that's us. That's the people. That's the radical love, the unwavering courage. That's what bends it toward justice. And Dr. King's voice, that radical voice, is still calling us to bend it toward justice. Will you act? I say yes, you will, and you do. When I think about what the capacity of humanity is, and what we did during COVID, after COVID, what we have done during the wildfires, what we did after 9/11, you see the capacity of the better angels. You know it's there. That we can be a people united. You see somebody stuck in a hole and you walk by, you don't care what color that person is, you know they're struggling, you can relate. Hey, I could have fallen in that hole. You can relate. And you want to help them out. That's our capacity. We've got to lean on that. And what makes you do that? That help the person out that place they're stuck in. No matter who they are, because you know they're suffering and you can relate to that humanity. What makes us do that? It's the will. It's the story. I am that person. And in that moment, we can let go of that tribal, primitive, amygdala. And so when we are inviting winter relief, the homeless to come into our space, our safe space, that's using the will to make positive change. And I thank you for that, for all your work in allowing this to happen on these cold nights. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. I see the namaste in you. We can feed our every need, the song says, if peace and freedom is our cry. You know, I like to end my sermons with a poem or a hymn. It was something Dr. King did all the time. I just love it. It's a way to end with passion. And as I was writing this sermon, I was thinking about story and the dream, and then Langston Hughes came to mind. And so even though we face some stormy and cloudy and cold days ahead in our moral order, something big is happening. We have to hold fast to the dream. Hold fast to the stories that we know to be true, that love is at the center of all we do. Hold fast to dreams, Langston Hughes said, for when dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field, frozen with snow. Remember the radical king. Amen.